So today we're going to discuss an important uh, concept in any programs, which is using variables. I'm sure you would have had variables in your day-to-day work, right? You would have heard or you read somewhere how variables play an important role in any programming language, right? Whether it's a Java, C++, or Python, anywhere it's a very important concept. So now, what is that variable, right? Why many programming languages use that, and why would you use variable when you're writing a program, right? So variables are basically it's to hold the value temporarily, right? So for example, I wanted to set department, maybe a finance department, and I wanted to keep that finance department as in a variable so that I can use it in my further processing. Okay, so or if you are dealing with an again employee name or employee date of birth, so you want to store it temporarily in a variable before making further processing, you can use variables. Okay, so that is the purpose of variables. Okay, so similarly in ADF also provides you to set and modify the values during the pipeline run. Okay, so now if you remember the earlier yesterday we did an example. Let me show that. So when we're doing the activity switch activity, we have created a stored proc. There we have declared a variable and we have set the value for that variable. If you see, declare a random number, which is an integer type of variable, and after that declaring, we set that value. We have sent a value to the variable using set command, right? So this is a classic example of setting using a variable and assigning a value to the variable. Now once I assign the value to this, I can use it in my further processing. You can see in the case statement I have used the variable directly. Okay, so these kind of situations where variables help you to hold that value uh, and then use it again and again in your further processing. Okay, so now as I said, pipeline also you can use variables in Azure pipeline where you can set and you can modify the value during the pipeline run. And there are three data types it supports. One is string, boolean, and as well as array. Okay, so the example could be we also use at the rate variable and followed by variable name. Okay, so now where we will set that value. So if you go to pipeline, let's create a new pipeline. So before I create any pipeline, so before I use any of the activity in the pipeline, if you open a pipeline, you could see the down window where you have parameters, variables, settings, and output. Okay, so now parameters we already discussed. So parameterizing a pipeline, parameterizing a link service, parameterizing a data set, and how that works in a pipeline. Now you could ask what is the difference between parameters and variables, right? The difference is parameters once you set the value during the runtime, you cannot change over and over again. But variable, once you set that a variable, we can change that value during the runtime. As you can see here, initially I have set that value to default, set that value to a number, And then as it keep going, every time it get changes over the period when you execute again and again the stored proc. Okay, so now that is the difference between a parameter and variable. Okay, so it's a very important concept you need to understand, guys. Okay, so now parameter simply we can click a new and we did so we have created so many parameters. Okay, so now let's create a variable. Similarly, variables, when you click on a variable, you can open a new window and you can give a name to that. For example, I want to create a city name. City name, when you give the city name, you need to select a type of variable that you wanted to uh, create that. Okay, either is a string, boolean, or array. So let's create an array. Sorry, string, and you can assign a value. For example, daily. Okay. Okay. So now this variable I can use it. I can use it in my pipeline. Okay. And also, if you see the system variables, if you see any of the activities, and if you see any the dynamic content where we can add dynamic content to the some of the expressions, you could see there are a lot of system variables, system functions are available to use it. Okay, so systems variables are nothing but ADF by default provides you some of the variables that when you create a pipeline, so those variables you can use it in your activities. Okay, so for example, if you see, we'll come up with an example. Okay, I'll show you that. Now, what is set variable? Okay, so in this case, if you see, I declared a variable which is a city name and I assigned the default value as Delhi. Now, the purpose of a variable is can be set and modified during the pipeline, right? So how can I set and modify during the pipeline? So suppose I wanted to change this default value to Mumbai or Bangalore or any other city during my pipeline run. So how do I modify this value? So that's where you have a option called a set variable. Okay, using set variable, you can modify and you can um, uh, set another value to the city name. Okay, for example, if you see, so as usual, when you select the set variable, you need to fill the general information, and then you see the pipeline variable. The variable whatever we created in the pipeline automatically comes over here. Okay, so once the value is came over here, you can modify that. For example, like I want to modify this to um, Bangalore. Right? Either you can mention the value over here or you can use the dynamic content to select that. Okay, so if you see during the dynamic content, you can see the system variables where ADF automatically gives you. For example, there is a need to get the data factory name in your data factory, or there is a need to get the pipeline name, or there is a need to get the pipeline run ID in a variable. So all this stuff, when you declare a pipeline, all these variables are assigned automatically, and you can use them in your pipeline, and you can persist accordingly. Let's say you want to store run ID in a table or something, right? So you can use this run ID, pipeline run ID, and then assign to a variable, and then you can use it accordingly. Okay, so now that's about let's do that. Okay, so now let's debug this one. See the city name, it now it changed it to Bangalore. Now, if you want to see, let's say so this is a change city name, which I will not be giving anything. Okay, so in order for you to see what is the variable is coming out, you can again add another set. Now you can assign the value from this one, which is city name. Okay, how do you assign? You can see the variables are coming here. Okay, so what I did initially, I created a variable city name. I have assigned to Delhi. Okay, and using set variable, I changed the Delhi to Bangalore. Okay, and this Bangalore information I am again setting into another. I declared another variable which is change name, and it doesn't have any default value. So the Bangalore, which is the change name, I'm setting again into the another variable. Okay, using dynamic content. Now let's do that debug. You see the change name been assigned to as Bangalore. Okay, so now the change name you can use it in any other way. So this is the way we will create the variables initially and set that values during the pipeline using the set variable. Okay, and you can create multiple variables, and now you can create a dynamic content. Either set the value using a string value, or you can use the dynamic content to set that variable. So whatever the variables we created, they will be automatically populated over here, and then you can use those in setting the value to the another variable, or you can use the variable in your pipeline run. Okay, so now what is append variable? So append variable basically is works with the arrays. So let's say you have a variable declared as a array, and you give a initial default values, one or two values, and you want to keep adding the values to that array during the pipeline run. So that is where append variable will come into picture. Okay. So now let's create another variable which is list of cities. So create this as an array. Okay, so I have created Bangalore and Chennai. Okay, so this is the initial list I have added. Now, what if I want to keep adding to the I wanted to add another value, or maybe more values to the array during the pipeline run. Maybe during the pipeline run I could be getting more than two cities apart from the Bangalore and Chennai. I could be getting other cities as well, so those values I want to capture. Okay, so that is where append value will come into picture. Okay, so now let's do that. So when you do that, you see the list of cities, because see append variable only accepts the variables that are type as array. So though we have other variables, you see, they are not coming up over here in the drop down. Why? Because you cannot use these variables in your append variable. Variable only supports the array type of variables. Okay, so we have a list of cities, so it's automatically comes up. Now I wanted to you add. Now we have Bangalore, Chennai. Now I want to add. Uh, I want to add Delhi. Okay, so what I can do, either I can add Delhi over here, I can use the dynamic content variable and city name, which is the default value already available. Okay, so now how do I know whether these Delhi been added to the list of cities uh, variable? Okay, so now use again another set variable. Okay, so initially you have Bangalore and Chennai and Delhi going to be added over here. So once you have all these values, just check whether it's been added to or not. So what we can do, we can change this to an array, and we can assign the all the values to this variable to check whether the Delhi been added or not. All right. So in order to do that, you need to change this type to array, because you cannot assign array to a string. All right. So what we can do is we can use here change name. Okay. Now I can use the change name, and how do I assign the value? I wanted to assign the output of this append variable to a set variable. Okay. So let's debug and run. You can see Delhi been added. So initially we have Bangalore and Chennai, and Delhi been added to the array list. So that's how we assign, create, and modify the variables using append and set variable activities, and we use them in our during the pipeline run, and we set those variables, and accordingly we will uh, use them into the further processing. Okay, so now let's play with some uh, pipeline, some of the system functions. Okay, so I will delete and I will use set variable. Okay, so before set variable, I just want to. Okay, so let's create another one. Okay, so I have created a pipeline run ID, and I wanted to assign the pipeline run ID to this variable during the pipeline run. So how do we do that? So pipeline run ID, and how do I assign the value? I can use go to system variables. So you can see pipeline run ID. So which is auto generated during the pipeline run. Right, which you may not be know what is the pipeline run ID. Okay, so let's see that. You see the pipeline run ID is auto generated during the run, and it already assigned to a value which is in a string format. So this is the run ID. So in the real time, if you want to get any for example, let's see. So if you want to get data factory name or pipeline name or a group ID, run ID, anything, there's so many are available. You can use these system variables, and you can append or use them as well. And not only system variable, there are functions available. Let's say you want to get the date functions, right? So you want to format a date. You're getting a date format from the source system different, and you want to format the date into a required format that for your use case, and store it in a variable. So you can use these functions and do that, right? Or you, if you, let's say you want to get the time, what is the time now? All right, so you can, let's say I wanted to see the, so I want to see, okay, so I want to get the time. Okay, so just select that one and do that, and then you can debug. You see now, right now it's a this is in UTC format. See, you got the time, right? Similarly, if you want to get the time and date time from a pipeline during your runtime, you can use this variable concept and assign those system functions which are already available. Anything you want to add, let's say you want to add, okay, let's say I want to add, right? I want to add 10 plus 10. So okay, so this is an integer, right? So it might not support. So let's do that. So in that case, what you can do is you can convert to integer to a string, and then you can add the value to here. All right. So I think we have a two string. See, there are so many functions are available. You can see that. You can add numbers, you can do that, and you can convert to those numbers, right? So all these things you can play with that. See, to upper, to lower. You can convert time zones. You can see that. And let's say you want to convert to some timestamps to UTC. UTC, I hope you guys understand. UTC is Universal Time Zone. Okay, so we have different time zones for different geographies. For example, US follows a different time zone, Europe follows different time zone, and so on and so forth. So UTC is kind of a common across the globe. Okay, so in that case, it's if you're getting from Europe and if you're getting the US, and basically they're into different time zones. So you can use these convert functions to convert those time zones into UTC, and accordingly you can use it. Okay, so all this you can play with this available functions. You can use it as a functions and the system variables, and then accordingly you can assign the values. Okay, so that's about variables. Now, in yesterday's session, there was a pending activity which is until, right? So the reason I kept this as a pending because I need to use a variable concepts in this activity, and I want to explain what is variables, how you can use so those accordingly before I talk about until. Okay, so until is basically execute the set of activities in a loop until the condition evaluates to true. Okay, it's like a do until or do while loop in any programming languages. If you're from C or Java, you can use or even Python also. There is an option to do until and do while loop. So until the condition is met, you can the until keep executing the activities mentioned in the activity. Okay, so now let's do a quick so let me delete all the things. Okay, so I want to create a okay. So the scenario would be, I wanted to copy the data from a stored storage services to bring it to a database only if the file is exist. Okay, by default, the file may or may not available, but my pipeline has to take care if the file exists, then only it should take that file and copy that. Otherwise, pipeline should not do anything and should not fail. All right. So how do we achieve that situation? So I have created a variable called file exists, and then I assign as a false. Okay. So now I'll bring until. Okay, so now I can use that. So and now, so what in the, how do I check whether my file is exist in the storage or not? Any answers?
Sorry, sir. Can you tell me again?
So how do I check whether my file is exist in the storage account or not?
In storage account, my file. So I can check the file creation date, right? Or modified date.
So how do you check in pipeline?
Um, I'll use stats one metadata. I'll read the metadata.
Exactly. So metadata, you need to use the metadata to check whether the file exists or not.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So metadata, you can use the data set, which is or create a new one. Okay. Blob storage, CSV, and I can use DS employee, and I can use any of the blob storage. Right. So now I could see. Okay. Let's use another one. All right. Okay. So what it does, it will check for that employee CSV that exist or not. Okay. So now for that, what argument and what field list we need to use? Exists. Exists basically returns true or false. Okay. Now once it exists, let's say it doesn't it will check, right? So once we will use uh, if condition.
If
So how do we?
condition.
Yeah, so we need to validate whether it's a true or not, false. So that can only happen through if condition, right? So in the if condition, you can sorry, go back. Right. So in the if condition, we need to validate that expression of get metadata output. Okay. So now the output comes in a string format, right? But if condition accepts a boolean variable, whether it's a true or false. Okay. So you need to convert this to bool. boolean. Okay, so you see,
Yeah.
so you need to convert this output to boolean.
So we can directly put it true and false also, right? As a text.
So text is a string value, right? So if you remember,
Yeah.
if only accepts um, true boolean value, true or false. So now
Mm-hmm.
if you give true or directly, it's become a text. It's a string value.
Yeah. So, but my question is, true means 0 or 1, right? 0 means
No,
false.
no. True means so it's depending on. See, true is a boolean value.
Yeah, Boolean value. So it can be the 0 or 1, right? Depending on the output, if condition, depending on the if condition, it can fall either 0 or 1, right?
No, see, zero or one. See, normally you cannot validate boolean value with a equal to true or anything. Okay, so in
Oh,
order
okay.
to do that, you can assign a zero or one according to your need. Okay, so that's boolean value can only be validated through another boolean.
Hmm.
Yeah. So for
Okay.
example, so let's say you have declared a variable, right, which is the boolean, and you have assigned a value which is true.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, now how do you validate this one? You cannot use if department equal to true. You cannot, this will not work. The only works is if department then. That means if department is true, then how do you validate false? If not department, then do something.
Correct.
So this is the way you will validate whether it is a true or false. You cannot use equal to true or equal to false, so on and so forth,
Okay. Okay.
right? So now, okay, so now if it's a true, what I need to do? If it's false, what I need to do, right? So if I if it's a true, I need to copy the data to from okay. So one thing we need to do as well. Uh, so we are getting the metadata from here, right?
Mm-hmm.
Exists or not, and
Mm-hmm.
then we are passing this to here, and if it's true, you are using the copy, or for example, let's take the weight activity. Okay,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
weight 10, and if it's false, weight 20. Okay, so now, okay, so one thing, one thing. So we will not be using here. Okay, let me see that. So if it's a true, let's the right if the condition is true, then we need to set the variable.
Mm-hmm.
Set the variable to true. You remember the until variable until we are using, right? Until we are setting the expression as a variable until that variable becomes true. The until the until the activities will not run,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
right? So once it's become true, you need to set that variable to true.
Okay.
Okay, so we remember we have done this, right? So here we can get it true. True. Okay, so once it's true, what will happen?
Once it is true.
So once it's
Uh,
true, then once it's true, that means the file is available.
Correct, correct.
Right now, we can do a copy or whatever you want to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so this is how the until works. Okay, so now let's do a copy, and for copy you need to mention the source. So source is data set is DSEMP Hope this is working, and we wanted to use wildcard and dot CSV, and our target is uh, the target. Let's create a new data set. Target to we wanted to keep it in Azure data, Azure SQL table, right? So Azure create a SQL database, and DS load IMP. So we already have so many. Let's use an existing one, and it's still loading, and we can give the employee. Okay, let's leave it as is. And mapping, we already right. So we already know this mapping, right? So delete this one. So one is ID, two is name, three is salary. Okay, so let's do debug now. Until activity one expression is required. Okay, so we did already, right? I like this. You see here, it's failed,
Mm-hmm.
saying that evaluate if condition. The function bool was invoked with a parameter that is not valid. Okay, so you remember we were discussing, right? We need to convert the value to a boolean. Then only we can use that. Okay, so now go back to our pipeline, and so the if condition. So this output is not a boolean. That is where it's giving a problem. Okay, so now we need to convert it to boolean. Now, so what is the conversion function to convert? You can see over here, and you can see there is a function called bool. Okay, so function convert the parameter to a boolean. For example, the following expression returns false. Okay, so use that. And then within here, we can use the output. Okay, now let's debug. I think there is some issue with the metadata. See, it's still in the queue, right? It's not able to get the resources to execute. Okay, so keep trying, keep refreshing. It happens, especially when you are using a free account, right? So these kind of infra related issues might come up. But overall, I hope you got what how until works,
Mm-hmm.
right? Okay, so let's debug this. So we are using metadata and we are using exist, right? Does this employee CSV exist? Demo training employee CSV. Okay. And okay, so we are using dataset employee CSV. Which one are we using, Sachit?
For this one, I didn't remember the name. I
Okay,
think
so let's create a new one. Okay.
new one, yeah.
The field we are using exist. Okay, so now that exist, we are validating over here, right? So we are okay. So let's validate everything. Validation is good. Let's publish. See, sometimes we are doing in everything in debug mode, right? It's not possible. So let's publish and then run again. Okay, so now debug. Okay, so what are we getting in the if condition? So let's go back. What exists? What exists returns? Sachit, do you remember?
What exists written?
Yeah. So
True or
exists
false it
true
will
or
give, right?
false? Yeah.
Yeah, that's a boolean it will give.
So it's saying you cannot convert that. Okay, so
Can we just okay, mm, does not accept. So I'm just thinking, sir, activity, can we put it directly true? If I, maybe I'm wrong, but I was just thinking, can we do
yeah,
that way?
yeah, we can do that. See, but the overall idea we can got it right. How it works,
Correct.
right? So now
Yeah, yeah.
if it's a true, then set the variable file exist. So you cannot assign like this, I believe. Okay, so do that. Uh, okay, it's still failing with the same error. All right. Don't worry, we'll fix this. Okay. We did some mistake in assigning the variables only. But hope you guys get the overall idea of how until works,
Yep, yep.
right? And if you have understanding and if you have time, let's do fix this one and come up with for tomorrow.
Okay,
That's an
sure.
exercise. Okay.
Okay, okay.
And so now we have last 5 or 10 minutes. So do we have any questions?
No, as of now, I don't have, sir, any question to ask.
Venkat, Sunita.
Sir, when there are already inbuilt functions in ADF,
Mhm.
so where can Python be used in this ADF?
Yeah, that's a good question. So let's assume that so there are so many activities, inbuilt functions, everything is there, right? But
Yes.
still, you want to run it work as a programmatically way. Okay, you
Mm-hmm.
want let's assume that you already have some code in your legacy systems, and you want to reuse that code pertaining to business logic,
Yes.
right? So in those cases, you will use Python or whatever the code that language you are following. You will bring that code over here and execute as a script,
Yes.
right? See, these all are available and useful, but when it comes to the real time, the situation, you might not be these might not be able to solve, but you have your custom code to develop and execute. So those cases, you can write Python script and use that.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
So Sunita, were you able to try the exercise that we given? We can't hear you if you are speaking. Okay, no worries. So now I want to quickly discuss about we discussed about until and there was an issue. We'll fix it in tomorrow. Now, if you see web activity, so what is web activity? So web activity is something which see so far we've been connecting to different storage and different databases and pulling the data and bringing it to our target model. Okay, so now what is web activity? Let's say the customer or the client you're working on, he says that, hey, look, my data is available over a REST API, right? So you can execute that API and you can pull the data, right? I hope you guys are aware of what is REST APIs. So API is nothing but your uh, application programming interface that many companies use the one second. You use in terms of providing exchanging data between the different systems. So instead of the source sending a CSV file or JSON file to the different consumers, they will just create an API and that API they will expose and use it expose to other parties so that they can easily access that. For example, let me show you an example. So you can see this is a dummy REST API. This is again a dummy one. So they are exposing employee data in a different endpoints. For example, get that. So hope you guys understood what is the REST and the different methods available within REST. Okay. So if you are not able to know, if you don't know what is REST, go do and some research, and you might be required to work with REST APIs in your real time. Okay, so now if you see to get the employee data, they have given a URL. Okay, so let's execute this one. And you see the when you execute that, the data is coming like a JSON file. You see, so the data is something like this. So you have a ID, you have employee name, employee salary, age, and so on and so forth. So like that, there are so many employee data is available using an API. Right. So now these kind of situations, if you want to deal with where the customer or the client is sending data over an API, and there is a web activity that you can use, and you can pull the data from the publicly accessed URLs. For example, this is a publicly accessed URL. So I can easily get the data. So similarly, there are so many um, so many companies, they put their data into public domain so that it's useful for others to consume and others to use it. Okay, so that is where the the web activity come into picture. So we'll do a demo tomorrow along with validation activity. Okay, so the last one is validation. We'll talk about webhook in our later part, because for webhook we also need to understand what is Azure functions, right? So that we will discuss in later point of time, but tomorrow we will discuss, we'll fix until activity. Along with that, we will work on web activity and validation activity. Okay, so with this we are pretty much covering activities in ADF, and we will move the next set of content based on the syllabus. Okay. All right, guys. So that's all for today. We'll resume again tomorrow, and have a good day.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank